Okay, we're live, Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Councillor Faduma Mohammed. I will be chairing this meeting. My colleagues are joining this meeting today, Councillor Gareth Shaw and Councillor Rima Baklini. I am a Compromise Today subcommittee. We also have our legal advisor and also the person who's minuting our meeting, Sam Kirkham. The legal advisor is of the subcommittee is Alison, and you have received the agenda pack for the meeting, yes, which contained the licensing officer report. So to confirm, we're dealing with the application to review the premises licensing made by Bob Deere at JK Convenience Store, 250 Ricef Road, Greenford, UB6 9RS, Greenford Broadway.
Yeah.
Okay. So in accordance with the procedure, I shall invite the applicant to present the application, answer any questions and call any witnesses. Also invite those who have made the objection to make their representation, answer any questions and call any witnesses. At the conclusion of the hearing, the subcommittee, accompanied by the legal advisor and committee democratic services officer, will retire to consider the decision. The decision will be given at the end of the meeting and confirmed in writing within 5 working days. If the panel cannot reach the decision today, you will be notified in writing within 5 working days of the panel decision. Is that okay?
Yeah.
We'll hear your case now. Thank you.
Chair, it will go Bob Deere first.
Oh, apologies.
Okay.
Bob, the applicant, Bob Deere.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a licensing enforcement officer with Ealing Council, and I accompanied immigration enforcement officers on Wednesday, the 26th of July of last year to JK Convenience Store, 250 Ruislip Road, UB6 9RS. When we entered the shop, there was one male working alone. It was actually stocking shelves from a trolley, and after introducing ourselves, he was asked questions by immigration enforcement, and it was found that he was working illegally in the UK. I will, obviously, unfortunately, you've heard that the enforcement officers cannot come online, so I'm going to just pick out some bits in the statements that are with the pack of Manish Ujel. He states that he went in and he revealed that the man was working in the shop. He asked him certain questions, and he asked him his role, and he said he'd been working there 3 to 4 months as serving the customer and stocking up the shelves, and he works 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And he said that the person who gave him the job was Hammer Abdullah, who's the owner of this business, and obviously who tells you what hours and days to work, and he said again the same person. He said asked how much money he earned, and he said he was paid cash in hand, and he earned £8 an hour, and he receives it all in cash. Doesn't pay national insurance. He had a visa before, but not now. And basically, he was asked if he'd given documents to the owner, and he answered no, he hadn't shown the documents. But he'd been working there 3 or 4 months. And he said, "Does your employer know that you're not allowed to work in the UK?" And he said, "Yes." I think yes. Sorry, I prefer that. He's answered, "I think yes." The second officer spoke to the husband, who's obviously sitting here, Mr. Palmgee, and asked the position, he said it's the business is in wife's name, which it is. The license is in wife's name, is obviously the designated premise supervisor as well. Obviously, some of the answers he gave refuted those remarks made by the person that was found to be overstaying. That person was arrested and a civil penalty was served on the premises, which has been paid, I believe, in full already. There was a representation from the other side of immigration enforcement, and I'd just like to read that out. It says that the Home Office Immigration Enforcement considers that the owners are not taking suitable measures to prevent crime and disorder. The business has employed a legal worker, which is prohibited under the Licensing Act 2003 and the Immigration Act of 1971. Employing illegal workers in the UK has the following impact on the community and society as a whole. It deprives HMRC and the government of revenue by non-payment of tax and national insurance. It exploits the undocumented by paying them less than minimum wage and provides no employment or income protection. It encourages those without permission to work to seek similar employment. It allows a business to unfairly undercut other businesses by employing cheap labour, and illegal workers are often housed in cramped and unsatisfactory conditions by the employer, not in this case, I'd like to add, as part of their working arrangement. The outcome they seek is that they say it's the greatest concern is that the illegal worker was the only member of staff present at the premises and therefore solely responsible for the supervision of sales of restricted items such as alcohol and tobacco or vapes. And neither he nor the manager were a licensed or designated premises supervisor. Whereby negligence or willful blindness and illegal workers engaged in activity on the premises. It is a simple process for an employer to ascertain what documents they should check before a person can work. All employers are duty bound by law to conduct these premises if they wish to avoid being penalised if found to have employed someone who is prohibited from working. The guidance can be found on the government website. It says it is an offence to work when a person is qualified to do so, and such an offence can only be committed with the cooperation of a premises licence holder or its agents. It's also an offence to employ an illegal worker where there is reason to believe this is the case. Section 182 guidance of the Licensing Act 2003 at point 1127 states that certain activities should be treated particularly seriously, and this includes employing someone who is disqualified from that work by reason of their immigration status in the UK. 11.28 of the guidance states that it is expected that revocation of the licence, even in the first instance, should be seriously considered. I have seen some of the representations come from the premises licence holder. The fact that they're in the process of leasing out the premises. However, in the statement of Manish Vijay, questions answered were the fact that these persons, agents of that premises who were in charge at that time, employed that man and had him in his shop. And that is my representation and my presentation to committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, or would you like Mr. and Mrs. Sajura to go with your statement?
Yes.
Yeah, what it is, we didn't know he was illegal. Another staff member recommended him, so he came to the shop and on his phone he showed his passport and he had a national insurance number. Okay, at that time, because I had my son had a baby and then she got pregnant again, I got a bit busy with childcare, and that's why since March 2022 we were selling the whole shop, but it took longer than we thought. And I mean, I've had this license since 2003, 22 years now. Never, ever done a single mistake. I'm very thorough. I even attended, you went to one of these courses. I've attended the courses And I made sure I actually went there. Me and my husband both attended all the courses. I know everything. Even I know the paperwork, the right to work. I know, but I did a big mistake. He said, yes, I'm going to bring the paperwork. I'm going to bring the paperwork. And I did say to him, look, I need this paperwork. And because my circumstances changed, that's the whole reason we're selling the shop. And the guys just took a long time, his paperwork. And I did the biggest mistake, honestly. And I really, really feel, really, really bad about it, because we're very thorough, even training for everything we do, A to Z. Never done a mistake. 22 years. And I really feel bad, and I really am very sorry. I should have really done the checks properly, how I should have. But he said I took his word, but I should not have taken his word.
Thank you, Mrs. Ajula. Councillor Shaw, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to suggest that we just have questions for Mr. Dear first, and his presentation, and the premises owners here, Mr. and Mrs. Ajula, can ask Mr. Dear any questions that they wish. I mean, you've given a good summary of what I think is your presentation, which can come next. But if you have any questions for Mr. Dear specifically, just on the evidence from his paperwork or what is presented, perhaps you might like to ask them now, and then either myself or Councillor Backlini might have a couple of questions as well.
Thank you. Mrs. and Mr. Ajula, do you have any questions for our applicant?
Who's that?
Mr. Bob Dear?
Is that the
gentleman just talking?
Yes, he was
Yeah, he wasn't on underwage because he wasn't working. I think he lied there. He wasn't getting like £8 an hour. He was actually getting £10.20. I was giving him an hour. So, and he didn't do 40 hours. He used to come in, like I said, 30 hours because I don't really need them 40 hours. And he said, he just said these things because I was paying him. He used to come in sometimes actually to stand. I said, we don't want you standing around. But so he wasn't really it wasn't on £8 an hour.
Thank you, Mrs. Ajula. Do you have questions for Mr. Dear, who's the licensing enforcement officer who visited the property?
Okay.
Do you have any questions for him of his findings on that day?
Not really.
So, well, he was on his own that time because like I said, the 1-year-old, then she's pregnant again. I had to really emergency. I had to look at go. They wanted me to have the little baby, the other one, and that's why my circumstances changed, and that's why he was on his own. But not all the time. He wasn't on his own. Only emergency times because we're there a lot of the time ourselves.
And I went for cash and carry. Once I finished my cash and carry, I was gonna get to the shop anyway.
So,
okay. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Ajula. Councillors, do you have any question for Mr. Borghi?
I do have a couple, please, Chair. First of all, and we've heard that he was the only staff member in the shop at the time. I was just wondering, have you visited JK Convenience Store at all previously, Mr. Dear? It sounds like Mrs. Ajula, has been the licence holder there for over 20 years. So I was just wondering if it's been subject to any previous visits.
as in Mr.
Thank you, Councillor. I've never been to this premises before, but I can confirm that Mr. And Mrs. Ajula had another 2 premises on the borough, and I think I've sold the one in Boston Road, but I've still got the Greenford Avenue one. And I can confirm that we've never had a problem. I've been to the Greenford Road, Greenford Avenue, sorry.
Yeah, quite a few times. Yeah.
We've seen it.
Yeah. But obviously, that's because the reason I've been to that premises mainly is because they have complained about people hanging about outside and things like that.
We have.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Any other questions for Mr. Deer?
Chair, I have no questions for Mr. Deer.
I have. Is there any questions for Mr. and Mrs. Sajula?
No, you haven't. Sorry.
I have a question for Mr. Deer. When you visited the premises, the person that said that they have been working there for 4 months, is that right?
Yes, 3 to 4 months.
3 to 4 months. And have they shown you any ID, any evidence that they have rights to work in the UK?
That was dealt with by the immigration enforcement officers, but he didn't have any right to work in the UK at all. And I think I think in the representation by the premises license holder, it does say that they did ask for identification, but he kept saying, "Yeah, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you."
Yeah, he said he worked in a shop before because he was quite experienced, you know, because a lady who worked there helped us work there before Sunny. She actually lived upstairs and she went to job in the airport. So she's the one who like recommended him. He said he's quite experienced, but he knew everything about the store. So that's when we showed me his national insurance number and his
Mrs. Sajula, may I finish with my question with Mr. Deer, and I'll come back to you. Thank you. Mr. Deer, did the person in the shop on that day mention that they have or have not informed the owners that they have the right to work in the UK? So I think you mentioned something at the beginning of your findings, but I wasn't quite sure.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just going to look at the statement of Manish Hujel, who says,
sorry to interrupt, Mr. Deer. Manish is
an enforcement officer who arrested
okay.
the said
Thank you.
my apologies. He was asked whether he'd made any application to the Home Office to regularise his leave in the UK, and he replied no. Are you currently working in the UK? He said yes. Then do you know that you are working illegally in the UK as you do not have valid leave to work in the United Kingdom? He replied yes. So he didn't have any papers. He knew fully well that he shouldn't be working.
Thank you. Question for Mr. and Mrs. Sajula. What's your recruitment process when you recruit a new employee?
Okay, we get the passport copy. We have a little file, the right to work, and then you can get his visa, or you have to get, if they go to students, if they go to college, normally you get their ID number, you put it on the computer, and it tells them if they got the right to work. So I know everything the way, but I just did a big mistake this time. Normally everything we do properly, because I've got the employer's right to work papers, all the information that I needed. I have got it all, and it's just it was a mistake I did.
Has this person that's been working for you filled in an application form where the information was supplied to you?
He's never done an application form at the moment because he was like it was like 9 weeks, isn't it? Up to 9 weeks, yeah.
2 to 3
And
weeks.
we don't offer him a permanent job at the moment because I wasn't sure yet. Because I said, I've gave him all his training, see all of his signed training, the trainings he all had to do. So everything he passed his training as well. So we were just asking him, bring your everything, your passport, all your information that I wanted, your right to work, or if you got a visa, your visa copy. So he said, yes, I'm going to bring it. And my fault, he should have had it straight away. I know, I'm not even saying it is my fault. I did a mistake.
Thank you. That will be all for me, the questions. Is there any other questions from the panel that you'd like to ask? Councillor Bakili?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to ask, you're saying that you have hired your workers since like 3 to 4 months ago, or 3 to 4 months.
About 9 weeks, yeah.
So he was in training for all this period?
So he was training, but he wasn't on his own. We were there most of the time. And sometimes emergency because of what happened, my little baby, and that's why whole reason I'm selling the shop, because because my lifestyle changed. And yes, I did push him and say, yeah, I've just got to get this, I've got to get authorized this. I know.
Whilst he was trained, whilst he was in training, who was in charge of the convenience store?
We was.
Both of us.
So both of you were always present all the time?
Most of the time. Sometimes, yeah.
And okay, and I have another question related to you paying cash. So over the period of 3 to 4 months, you never questioned why you were handing him cash and not via...
Because I said, look, I want your paperwork. And he said, look, I've got to pay my bills. I've got to do this. Then that's what happened. I normally don't even pay cash. Everything's in the books, online. You're putting money in the bank. We got an accountant who does everything. We got payroll. We got everything.
So for 4 months, you never questioned
everything. Not 4 months. It wasn't 4. It was about up to not even 8-9 weeks.
Yeah.
At the start,
let's say 9 weeks.
Say 9
so
weeks.
For 9 weeks, you never questioned the fact that the guy hasn't got a he didn't provide you with his papers, and he's still taking from you. Is it on a weekly basis you pay him?
Yes.
So every week he was getting paid cash, despite the fact that he didn't provide you any evidence. Okay.
He keeps saying, I said, look, I need, I understand what you're saying. I said, look, we need the paperwork, because he said, look, I just got to pay my bills. It's coming, he kept buying time from me, but I should have pushed it. I was wrong.
Thank you.
Really, very dearly sorry. Since never anything ever happened like this. All these years we've been in business, never. No past records, been perfect. We're very strict with everything. It's just, I'm just very dearly sorry. And I've never ever happen again.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, thanks, Mrs. Ajula. I was just wondering, and just following up a little bit on Councillor Backlini's theme, just sort of how many times did you ask him for his documents? In the evidence pack we have, under interview, it seems that he did sort of say that he had been avoiding handing documents to you, and you had requested them. So I'm just, as a rough guide, can you remember roughly how many it was?
I have asked him quite a few times. Even I've got a lady who does my back office, and I said, look, sometimes if I was busy, you got why isn't it? Ask him. Yeah. He said the same to her. I asked him quite a few times.
Okay.
Unless he was trying to get me paperwork, I don't know. Because I just don't know. Because he knows. I said, look, if you don't, you got to tell me now, because I need this paperwork. But I know I should, before I employed him, I know I should have done the right thing. But
okay. Thanks, Mrs. Ajula.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Chair, I have one if possible, please.
Sure.
Obviously to premises licence holders. In the presentation, Mr. Ajuja, you said that sometimes he worked 30 hours a week, or he worked 30 hours a week. However, when the immigration officer spoke to your husband, he said that he was declared that he was a student. And obviously, you appreciate that students, or the majority of students, are not allowed to work more than 20 hours.
20 hours, yeah.
Yeah, but you obviously said that sometimes he worked 30 hours.
No, remember what I was saying, he used to just stand around. So, and then
Right.
he said on holidays like Christmas, things like that, he said that sometimes he's on holiday. But like I said, what he did was, he said to me that 20 hours, I know a student can work 20 hours, but he just used to hang around sometimes. And
because of the holidays, I think he said.
No, you're quite right. If he's non-term time, he can work longer. But did you ask him what university he was at and what he was studying?
not really, no.
Thank you, Chair. No more questions.
Thank you. Alison, is there any other items that we need to cover before I sum up?
The parties may wish to just have a final word in summing up. Generally, that will be Mr. Deere, and then if Mr. and Mrs. Adula want to say anything finally. I think Councillor Shaw's got his hand up for a question in any event.
Thank you, Alison. Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a question for Mr. and Mrs. Adula again. I'm just sort of interested in the current status of the shop. You mentioned that you were selling it. Are you still selling it?
We are selling it to Mr. Rahul Kumar, and he's our premises license over. He's actually applied for the license as well. He has.
Right.
This has been going on since March.
It should be like completing within the next few weeks, maybe.
It's
Right,
not,
yes.
not just happened because this happened.
Yeah, you're in the process. Yeah.
We're just waiting for the landlord's paper consent. So everything's in the process. So should be within 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That clarifies it nicely.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. D, do you want to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. We'll be short and sweet. Obviously, I'd just like you to consider the guidance that I mentioned earlier in your summing, your decision making, and also just to bear in mind if that this license is a very old license, as mentioned, and it has very few conditions. If you were considering some other sanction, but that's my sum up. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Adula, do you want to sum up?
No, we're fine.
Any final words that you need to say?
We're very sorry, and in future we'll do everything the right way. I know that particular time we did a mistake, but like I said, 20 years in the business, never done this before, and we're deeply sorry.
Thank you. We will discuss this internally now and to deliberate our decision with the recommendation, the options that we have, and we'll come back to you with a decision in due course. If there's any other items that you like to consider you haven't mentioned before in this hearing, now is opportunity for you to add. If there isn't, then thank you very much for attending, and we will deliberate now. Just 1 minute. Do we need to come back on this call, Councillor Shaw?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to suggest offering a time to come back, so that Mr. and Mrs. Adula and Mr. Deere all know roughly what time it would be. I mean, I think perhaps if we said in about sort of 40 minutes or so.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes.
We might suggest. So it's 1:05 now. So in fact, shall we just make that sort of 1:45? It's 1:05.
1:45. We'll come back into this call. Is that okay, Mrs. and Mrs. Adula?
That's fine. Thank you.
1:45. We'll be back on this.